which we have heard and known and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he hath done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them unto their children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God. Father, I pray today that as we look into your word, that first and foremost, as we sang about, that you would be honored and glorified. May you, Father, today teach us from your word. May we learn. May we not repeat those same foolish mistakes that have been proven to be foolish in the past. And may we pass on to our children and our children's children those great principles that you have taught us. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. And everybody said, Amen. Teachable moments. You have taught someone else something, as that picture well depicts a teachable moment when that little boy is learning to shave from his daddy. I'm reminded of my children, 3 girls and 1 boy, and now 2 of my granddaughters who are with us a good bit of the time. Whenever I shave in the morning, hey, Papa, can I come in while you're shaving? I don't know what that is, but they love to watch Papa shave. And they're learning. Listen, I want you to know, we are always constantly teaching someone something. Every step we take, every word we speak, every action that we take is teaching someone something. Because there's always someone who is watching. And when I think about children in particular, and I think about on this Father's Day, really this message was birthed out of something that I saw take place, the Lord reminded me of last weekend when I attended my 40th high school class reunion. I graduated with a bunch of old people, and I hope none of them are listening this morning. I really didn't mean that. But you'll hear more about that next week. Wasn't planning on it being a 2-part sermon, but that's the way it landed. Teachable moments. You know, why is it that our children always seem to pick up on our worst habits? Have you ever noticed that? Or as someone has said, I believe it was Bill Gothard that said, what we do in moderation, our children will do in excess. It's a rather frightening statement, is it not? What we do in moderation, our children will do in excess. And often it's those bad habits. Or as Ann Landers wrote, it's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings. The writer of Proverbs said, in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, it's interesting, is it not, that Solomon would write this. You think about Solomon. Now remember, David warned Solomon about strange women, which is kind of ironic in David's own problem with women. And Solomon, there's a great example. There's a perfect example of what we do in moderation, our children will do in excess. Think about David's life, think about Solomon's life, and all of the wives and concubines that he had. But in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, the writer of Proverbs says this, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Notice it doesn't give us a timeline on when that's going to take place. You know, what we would like to think is if we teach something right now, then they immediately grasp it, they've got it, and they're going to do it from then on. How many of you found that that works every time? No, it doesn't work every time, right? That's why Isaiah says, line upon line, precept upon precept. Line upon line, precept upon precept. We have to keep teaching it, keep teaching it, keep teaching it, keep teaching it, keep teaching it. Dad, if you've said that once, you've said it 1,000 times. I know I'm going to keep saying it because you haven't got it yet. Continue to do those things in those teachable moments. I remember my dad teaching me something in a teachable moment. Maybe I've shared this story before. If I have, you'll hear it again. We went down the street. We got a load of dirt, took it to our house, unloaded it because the pastor at our church said you could have the dirt from this empty lot. Well, the guy who owned the lot was a builder who my dad and I did some work for in carpentry, and he happened to come along while we were shoveling the dirt in the back of the truck. And he said, who gave you permission? Didn't know, really at that time didn't know us. He said, who gave you the permission to get this dirt off of my lot? And my dad said, well, Pastor Joe Miller did. Well, he said, you didn't ask me. I remember, I can still see, I don't know why I remember seeing this, but I can still remember my dad going home and writing out a check for $75. I don't know why that amount. And he took it to Mr. Ken and gave him that for the load of dirt that we had already gotten. My dad taught me something in that moment. And it was not until many, many years later that I remember learning that, and I looked at the shoe at, somewhat slight. I thought, oh man, this is William tennis shoe. There's a lot of lamb in the Myrtle Beach area, and Dog Brownie got one of your shoes, and he said you didn't need to do that. I said, yeah, we did need to do that. And when that happened, it dawned on me that my father had taught me a principle about always doing the right thing. You see, we have teachable moments all the time. It's interesting, isn't it? God teaches. Aren't you glad that God teaches you things? How many of you had a recent teachable moment with God? I had one yesterday. We left the fair yesterday early. We tore down early. It was pouring the rain. Came here, pulled my truck and had the trailer on it. Was getting stuff out, got stuff out, put it in the kitchen, locked the trailer up, went to get back in my truck to put the trailer back in the garage. Where's my only key to my truck? So, I'm Mr. Fix-It. I'm going to fix things. I'm going to take care of it. That's my part of my downfall. I'm going to get it done, and I really don't need anybody else to get it done, and sometimes including God. How many of you can relate to that? I'm glad I'm not the only sinner in the crowd this morning, all right? I'm just going to get it done. In that moment, what should I have done immediately? Lord, help me. Lord, where are my keys? But I'm on a track. I'm in here. I'm looking in every place I've been. I'm all around. If I looked in my truck once, I looked in my truck 500 times. And finally, in my truck, out of desperation, because, oh, by the way, the only keys to the trailer that were anywhere other than in Jason's pocket in Logan were with my truck key, my only truck key. And out of desperation, I said, God, please, I want to know where my keys are. In the trailer. So I came in here, got the saws all, tried to cut and I had to go down and get a pair of bolt cutters from Greg Gobby, cut the bolt off, and guess what? There were my keys right there. I wasted a lot of time. And you say, well, what does God teach you? Well, he taught me a lot of things yesterday. I was a little frustrated, to say the least. Here we go. Listen, there's teachable moments which presents a good opportunity for learning something about a particular aspect of life. Or an expanded definition would be a teachable moment is an unplanned event during the day that adults can use as a learning opportunity for children. When a child displays an action or behavior that can be used as a learning tool, parents and providers should capitalize on that moment and provide the opportunity to expand or extend the child's learning. Teachable moments. I looked up some things. I just did a little Google search. Well, what does Google have to say about teachable moments? What should we be teaching? Here are some things. Here's how you raise exceptional children. Teach them 7 values: teamwork, self-care, seeing possibilities when others see problems, motivation, time management, accepting responsibility. Well, that certainly needs to be taught, does it not? Kindness. Here are some life skills. Another article says that we ought to teach at an early age. Decision-making, health and hygiene, time management, meal prep, money management, cleaning, laundry, comparison shopping, ordering at a restaurant, getting ready, maintenance around the house. Some interesting values to teach our children. Here are some others. 5 values you should teach your child by 5. Honesty, justice, to say that again, doing the laundry, planning. Listen, I'm great. I really am. I think about that. My mama and daddy, my mama taught me how to do the laundry. And not because she can or doesn't, but she's very busy. So guess who does his own laundry most of the time? I do. I do my own laundry. I know how to. Who ironed my shirt for me this morning? Not my wife. I did. I ironed my own shirt. I can sew. I can cook. I can bake. I know how to clean. I can even crochet. I haven't done that in a while. That's a little weird, isn't it? But anyway, all right? I was taught those things, all right? And by the way, just in case you're wondering, I am not gender confused, all right? Let's just make that straight right up. Not at all. No question about that. Even though that's something that our culture right now is trying to teach everybody, I am not one of those guys. Well, I better not get off on that one. Planting a seedling, wrapping a gift, hammering a nail, writing a letter. I'm not sure as adults we even know how to write letters anymore. Preparing a simple meal, navigating, treating a wound. What kind of household that's in. Cleaning the bathroom, comparison shopping. All teachable things that we ought to teach our children. I found it interesting that in the midst of all of that, I really saw nothing really of spiritual nature. Teachable moments are, I believe, most often spontaneous, but they can be created. Teachable moments are fleeting and often lost if we don't seize them at the moment. Teachable moments change as our children age. Teachable moments are all around us, we just have to be aware of them. Teachable moments can arise from both bad and good experiences. We can teach things out of both of those kinds of events. Teachable moments are for conversation, not condemnation. Or I was asking Katrina last night what her thoughts. She said, well, teachable moments are for teaching, not preaching. I think she was aiming that at me. I'm not sure, but I got what she was saying. It's really easy to preach at someone. It's an entirely different thing to teach them through something that they need to learn. And having a conversation. Teachable moments are more like nuggets than the whole vein. Little things at a time. It's interesting what the psalmist says, and we're going to look at 2 passages in our remaining time together this morning in Psalm chapter 78, and then a very familiar passage when it comes to teachable moments in Deuteronomy chapter number 6. But in Psalm chapter 78, the passage that we read as we began this morning, I want you to see that teachable moments are, I believe, what I would call opportunities. Teachable moments are opportunities. Opportunities to do what? Well, there are several things in this passage that I would say teachable moments are opportunities to do several things. And here they are. And we all, remember this, let me say, this is not just for dads or fathers. We all have the opportunity to teach someone something, or maybe even ourselves, in the midst of the teachable moment. In Psalm chapter 78, in verse number 1, I believe we see this. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I believe teachable moments are the opportunities to both listen and learn about the truth. Listen and learn about the truth. Whatever that moment may be, whatever that moment springs on you at that time, whether it's you and maybe another adult, or you and one of your children, or a friend, there's always an opportunity to learn and listen about the truth. There are all kinds of truth statements that are made if we just listen carefully. Now, you can hear all kinds of statements about a person's worldview if you'll just listen carefully to what they say. In the midst of all of those are great teaching moments. My children used to hate to watch movies with me, because during the movies, I would often make my worldview running commentary, kind of like those two talking heads on that, I don't know what that one show is where they got these two animals that are talking about the movie the whole time. I don't remember what that is, but, and I would say, I said, man, you know what? You realize they just made a statement about evolution in that movie? Dad, really? Stop. But listen, I want you to know, there are teaching moments all over. What are we doing with those? Opportunities to listen and to learn about the truth. But the only way we're going to be able to discern the truth is if we know the truth. That's right. In other words, you can't teach the truth if you don't know the truth. And the only way you're going to know the truth is if you study the truth, if you memorize the truth. And as I mentioned earlier, truth today is really whatever you want the truth to be. There's no longer any absolute truth. And we wonder why we are getting to the place that we are. I made this statement yesterday to someone walking down the street. I made it a few weeks ago. I said, listen carefully. The sexual and moral revolution that we are about to embark on as a culture will make the sexual and moral revolution of the 1960s look like a third grade Sunday school class. Did you hear what I said? Don't forget that. The sexual and moral revolution that we are about to embark on and many embrace will make the 60s sexual and moral revolution look like a third grade Sunday school class. Why? Because there's no longer any absolute truth. That's why Cecil can now run as Cece and win and beat all the women in the women's track and field events. You got to understand, and that's not just about that one thing, because it's certainly much wider than, listen, the moral and sexual revolution is much wider than just the whole homosexual ideals. It's much wider than that. But it's disastrous. But listen, if you're listening carefully to the things that are going on around us in the world, you'll find all kinds of teaching moments in which you can interject, learn, and listen about the truth. In verses 2 and 3, I want you to see it. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known and our fathers have told us. Teachable moments are opportunities to glean from history. One of the great problems in our culture today is we have rewritten history. We are continuing to rewrite history. And so those who are coming up through the educational system today, both at the elementary, middle school, high school, and then on to the university level, history is being clouded and erased, and so we don't know and understand the value of the Judeo-Christian principles upon which our nation was founded. And so we are rewriting all of that so as to speak into the lives of students today things that simply aren't true, because it's no longer based on biblical truth. And so we are eradicating the history. Why do you think they want to eradicate the history? Because they want to teach you what they believe is the new truth. But history teaches us some things. We should never forget history. God himself said, listen, I'm going to open my mouth and I'm going to speak to you some things from the past. Why? Why is it so important that I speak to you about the past? Here's why, he says. Verse number 4. We will not hide these things, these difficult things. You see, sometimes in teachable moments, it's an opportunity to teach difficult things. Listen, it's easy to teach your children how to swing a baseball bat. It's easy to teach your children how to bounce a basketball and shoot a basketball, or to swing a golf club, or to kick a soccer ball, or to throw a football, or learn how to twirl at ballet. And you know what? You have people knocking on your door all the time to help you teach them those things. But it's the difficult things, the hard things, that they need to hear the most. The things that are difficult to swallow, the things that take time, the things, honestly, that nobody wants to hear anymore. We don't want to talk about those things. It's too hard. And I believe it's also opportunities to pass truth on to the next generation. You see it in verse 4. We will not hide them from their children, showing them to the generation to come the praises of God and his strength and his wonderful works he has done. Verse 5 again, make them known to their children. Verse 6, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children. You see, what you're teaching today doesn't just stop today. It goes on generation to generation to generation. So here's the real test. The real test is, if we could step back in time, I wonder what my great-great-grandfather taught to my grandfather, who then taught to my father, that then I was taught. Or I wonder if we could fast forward into the future and we could look forward. I wonder what my son will teach his son, who will teach his son. Will it be the easy things, or will it be the difficult things? Great opportunities to pass truth on to the next generation. But I believe also it's a great opportunity to teach about the glory of God and all that he has done. You see it at the end of verse number 4. We will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. You say, what's the bottom line in all of this? The bottom line in all of this is about a person. Did you hear that? Let me say it one more time. The bottom line in all of this is about a person. It's not about a thing. It's not about an event. It's not about a home run. It's not about a goal scored. It's not about a trophy, of which I'm sure we all have lots of trophies that are somewhere in the basement that we've all forgotten about. It's not about that certificate. It's not about those things. It's those things that point to who God is. Who is God after all? And let me tell you about the wonderful things that God has done. I think we all can glean from this and really ask ourselves a very pointed question in our own lives, whether it's with our children or a friend or a family or husband, wife, or whoever. And when's the last time we had a lengthy conversation about the glorious, wonderful things that God has done? Now, when's the last time that conversation came up at the table or riding in the car or just hanging out in the backyard? Hey, let me tell you about the glorious, wonderful works of God this week. Maybe crickets at that moment. Hey, listen. You know why you might get crickets at that moment? It's because they've never heard you have that conversation before, and they don't know how to respond to it. I mean, when it comes down to it, who is it all about? It's not about you or me or the president or anybody else. It's about God and His glory. If that's true, then why are we not having any more conversations about that and looking around and seeing His glory? You know, how many of us, I did it, so I'm guilty. Yeah, look at my radar. Stinking thing's blue for the next 42 days. It's going to rain the whole time. I'm tired of rain. I'm getting tired of rain. Yeah, me too. My grass is going to be this tall, and I know what I'm going to do. How many of you said something like that in the last couple of days, or you've thought it? Perfect. All right, good. I mean, what about... Dude, have you seen that rain? Is that not an incredible demonstration of the glory of God? He's making water fall from the sky. Well, praise the Lord, preacher. That was a good point. That makes for good preaching, but it's not reality, because I just don't like the rain. Just saying. I'm right. I'm in the, no pun intended, I'm in the boat with you, okay? All right. I'm right there with you. For he, verse 5, established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children. You see, it's an opportunity to be obedient. Why? Because the psalmist knew that they were already commanded to do this. They were already commanded. They'd been previously commanded to teach these things. You say, well, where? Well, Deuteronomy chapter 6. We don't have time. I encourage you. I often pick a first 6 or 7 verses, but the entire chapter of Deuteronomy chapter number 6 is talking about teaching to our children and to the generations to come the things that God has done. And we're to do so when we're sitting down, when we're lying down, when we're rising up, when we're walking in the way. All of these things we're supposed to be doing. Teaching them all of these things. If you read down through that text, it's talking about, listen, look what God did. They planted and it brought forth fruit and all of these wonderful things that God did. Verse 18, and thou shalt do that which is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may be well with you, and that thou may go in and possess the good land which the Lord swore unto your fathers, to cast out your enemies from before you, as the Lord spoke. And when your son asks you in time to come, what are these testimonies and statutes and judgments which the Lord commanded you? Then thou shalt say to your son, we were Pharaoh's bondmen in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. The Lord let it rain today. And the Lord showed signs and wonders. He let it rain today. Great and sore upon Egypt, upon Pharaoh, upon his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from thence that he might bring us in to give us the land which he swore to our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to do these statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do these commandments before the Lord our God as he hath commanded us. Listen, teachable moments are an opportunity to be obedient, but opportunities to enable future generations to do three things. I want you to see these in conclusion. To see what three things? Here it is. Verse number 6, 7, and 8. That the generation to come might know them, even the children which shall be born, who should arise and declare them to their children. That they might set their hope in God, that their confidence would be in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So not only to know them, so why do they need to know them? So that they can put their confidence in God, so that they can remember his commandments. In verse number 8. So that they won't be and do as this dummy did. That's kind of a short version of that, but that's in essence what he says, right? And might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, whose spirit was not steadfast in God. Why are we teaching all of these things? So we don't make the same dumb mistakes. There, I said it. Okay, let's ask this question. Terry, why don't you come? I know it's probably not politically correct to use the word dumb, but how many of you in your life, now here's what I want you to do. This is participation time. How many in your life, if you've ever done this, I want you to stand up. How many of you have ever made a dumb, foolish mistake that you regret? Stand up if you did. How many of you would just love to go back and repeat those dumb, foolish mistakes all over again? You want to go back and repeat them again? Let me say it slow. How many of you want to go back and repeat them again? Okay, all right, I'm making sure. How many of you would love for your children and your grandchildren to repeat that? Exactly. If not, then we better start seizing on teachable moments. Would you pray with me? Father, help us. God, I know that in this room, it's a room full of people that have made foolish mistakes. Yet, God, we are so grateful that in your incredible love for us, and your mercy for us. You have granted to us forgiveness. Well, there may have been difficult consequences, yet you have forgiven us. And I pray, God, help us that we would neither model those foolish things, that we would abhor those foolish things, and God, that then we would teach those around us how to avoid those foolish things. Thank you, Father, for teaching us and for your love for us. Oh, how you love us. Thank you.